What happens when the trap you set snapped shut on you instead? She was supposed to crumble. That's what Pelosi's team counted on, a trap laid with surgical precision. Personal attacks, old scandals, national cameras waiting to capture Pam Bondi's downfall. But what no one expected was what came next. Pam didn't blink. She reached into her folder, tossed the documents on the table, and with a calm, ruthless clarity, flipped the entire script. One moment, Pelosi held the room. Next, she was cornered by her legacy. Where are you watching this from? Drop a comment below, and don't even think about skipping, because the ending to this story will leave you breathless. Sunlight sliced sharply through the half-open blinds, scattering thin, golden bands across the polished desk. Pam Bondi sat motionless in her Tampa office, eyes fixed on the envelope that had arrived without prior notice. Thick, creamy paper, embossed subtly with the unmistakable insignia of the United States House of Representatives. It carried no title, no formal greeting, only a single line scrawled elegantly in black ink. Sincerely, Nancy Pelosi. Pam traced her fingertips across the embossed seal, sensing the quiet intensity this innocuous envelope brought into the room. Nancy Pelosi never issued invitations casually, and certainly not without an ulterior motive lurking beneath polished politeness. Yet here it was, cryptic, elegant, and dangerous. The silence in her office deepened as she turned the envelope over in her hands, feeling its deceptive weight. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she took a steady breath, preparing herself mentally before slowly sliding a letter opener under the edge of the envelope. "Is it something important, Miss Bondi?" Emily Lane, her young secretary, leaned forward slightly from the doorway, hesitance coloring her voice. Pam barely glanced up, focused entirely on extracting the letter inside, neatly unfolding it on her desk. The neatly typed invitation carried all the trappings of decorum, a bipartisan dialogue on restoring trust in government, an earnest attempt at national reconciliation. Pam read it twice, her instincts crackling beneath her calm exterior, her gaze fixed on the elegantly handwritten note near the bottom margin, written in Pelosi's unmistakable controlled script. "Bring your agagam." Pam suppressed a dry, humorless smile. Pelosi, master of political theater, always knew exactly how to mask aggression beneath cordiality. Emily moved closer, her youthful features tightening with concern as she read over Pam's shoulder. "That's quite direct," Emily murmured, clearly uneasy. "It's intentional," Pam replied calmly, laying the invitation flat. Her gaze moved slowly to meet the wary eyes of Mark Harris, her chief assistant, who had silently entered the office sensing the tension. Mark folded his arms, his experienced gaze scanning the words with suspicion. He shook his head slowly, her brows knitting together. "Pam, this is exactly how they ambushed Senator Reynolds last year." The bipartisan dialogue turned into a partisan bloodbath on live TV. They baited him, edited his responses, and labeled him an extremist. It took months for him to recover his reputation, and even then the scars stayed. Pam acknowledged Mark's warning with a subtle nod, appreciating his protectiveness, but she felt no fear. Her pulse quickened slightly, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had spent years staring down corrupt officials and hardened criminals, managing intense public scrutiny, battling fiercely in courtrooms and media appearances. Fear was a companion long abandoned in her career. She leaned back in her chair slowly, allowing the silence to hang, weighty and meaningful. Mark pressed forward, his voice tight. "You understand what she's after, right? Pelosi isn't interested in your perspective or bipartisan harmony. She wants your credibility, your reputation. She'll paint you into a corner, brand you as radical or insensitive. That's Pelosi's endgame every time." "I understand," Pam said quietly, her voice steady and cold as steel. Her gaze was distant yet fierce, fixed somewhere beyond the confines of the room. "And yet, Mark, I've never avoided an open confrontation. It would disappoint me deeply if Pelosi didn't try her usual tricks. I don't fear challenge. I fear no one daring to ask the tough questions that deserve truthful answers." Emily glanced between Mark and Pam nervously, visibly torn. Mark drew a breath, visibly frustrated, trying again to shift Pam's perspective. "This isn't a courtroom, Pam. It's a live media circus. Pelosi will not play fair, and she'll definitely not play nice. This could turn toxic quickly." Pam slowly raised a hand, signaling gently yet firmly for silence. Her eyes flickered sharply, resolute and unyielding. "Precisely why I must attend. If we run from these orchestrated attacks, we surrender the narrative to those who manipulate truth. I refuse to hide from Pelosi or anyone else. If she desires an open dialogue, I'll give her one she'll never forget." Mark sighed quietly, surrendering reluctantly to her decision. Emily bit her lip, clearly uncertain, but choosing silence over further protest. The decision, once made, settled over the office, shifting the room's energy toward preparation and strategy rather than hesitation. Without hesitation, Pam reached across her desk, clicked her computer awake, and began rapidly typing a short, crisp confirmation email. The cursor blinked momentarily before she decisively hit send. "It's done. Tell the team we leave tomorrow morning," she said with definitive calm. Yet, no sooner had she sent the email, Emily's phone buzzed sharply, startling her visibly. Pam looked up, eyebrows drawn in a subtle question. Emily hesitated, eyes wide as she read the message silently. Her voice shook slightly when she finally spoke. "An anonymous email, Miss Bondi. It says simply, 'They